Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Beth Schultz, Program Coach here for Enterprise Connect and editor of No Jitter. And with me here today is J.R. Simmons, who is president of COMGroup as well as principal consultant with COMGroup. J.R. is going to be speaking at a couple of sessions here at Enterprise Connect, and we are happy to have you here, J.R.
Thank you.
So let me start with this question. You're leading a session in the contact center track on how to turn features and functions into customer experience best practices. So why is this topic important, and what are some of the tips you can offer in that session?
Thank you. It's one of those things that we elected to suggest this session in, I guess back in the summer, because too many of my clients have been purchasing the technology and then not using it correctly. Or in some cases purchasing the technology and not deploying it at all. There's a lot of emphasis in the marketplace to take advantage of all these capabilities that exist. Advanced analytics and APIs and wonderful capabilities exist, but the customers don't always understand how to leverage them properly. So what I was attempting to do with this approach is summarize some of those problems, some of the advantages and disadvantages of deploying the technology in different ways. So the first thing we talked about is recognizing the difference between a customer, an agent, and an organizational motive. So if I'm trying to solve a problem only based upon what the organization wants, then I'm not paying attention to the customer experience. Even if I'm only paying attention to the customer experience, I may put a tremendous burden on my agents. So really considering the impact of all three we thought was really important. So that was the foundation. Then we went into some of the different ways that those various technologies can be misused or used properly. Now, I don't have time for the whole presentation here, but some of the key tips included things like when you're deploying something like, say, an IVR system. They've been around for years. People often have built menus with too many choices, too many levels, and then they'll put them in place and not revisit them. And they are still looking at it as, how does the IVR get calls out of the call center instead of how does an IVR benefit a customer? We had a lot of statistics we were able to quote during this presentation as well, because there's been a lot of studies in this area. And what it comes back to is there are some best practices out there, but the message is not always getting to the customer. And so we covered things like bots, how bots with all their artificial intelligence can be a very valuable thing, but how they can be misused as well, especially bots that are overreaching. We also talked about multi-channel, omni-channel type things and how those elements can be, again, deployed well or deployed poorly, and how much of a difference it makes in the customer experience.
I'm kind of curious, when you mention things like bots and multi-channel, do you feel that some companies may rush into those because it's the hot thing, it's the cool thing, they don't want to be left behind, they think that they're going to deliver a better service if they go ahead, even if they haven't vetted it properly?
Yes, so two levels that those problems appear. The first is they buy the technology thinking that it was the right thing to do, and then they take forever to deploy it. We have a lot of clients that have invested in it because they were told it was a good thing, but haven't figured out how. So they're buying it even before they figured it out. Then those that do, often, like you say, are taking the technology and putting it in just maybe a piece of the organization, not understanding how it affects the entire customer experience. Or they'll put in what worked for some other company, not realizing that that way doesn't work necessarily for their organization. So yes, we see a lot of situations where they want the technology, there's a reason why they bought the technology, but it doesn't mean that they are going to do it right.
Okay. So let's shift from the contact center into the IT department, because you're also doing another session or have done?
The next one coming up tomorrow.
Okay. And that's going to be about how to determine what staffing and resources an enterprise may need if it's moving from CPE to the cloud.
Right.
So how important, what's the difference in staffing up to support a cloud-based system versus running a system in-house?
And this is a session that, again, we think was important because of what we're seeing within my client base. And also, I'm co-presenting on that one with Robin Garris from Nemerides.
Right.
And they did an analysis survey type thing. They do this every year with some really good results because they don't just survey a few, they survey a large number of customers. And she came back with some of the statistical information that very much matched what I was seeing within the client situations I'm in. And fundamentally what it came down to is there's a belief by a lot of folks that if I move to the cloud, I can save money. My IT staff can be reduced. In fact, sometimes there's even a sales pitch from an organization that is selling the cloud that, you can save money by reducing staff. Reminds me back to the days when we were told we could save money by going to VoIP from TDM.
Right.
And jobs change, absolutely. There are shifts. But it doesn't result in mass reductions in staffing. Now you can go a managed services route and outsource and save money that way, but you can do that even if you stay on-prem. So we focused in, both Robin's study and my work was focusing in on what actually does change. And so there's a reduction in certain things like the role of managing the day-to-day infrastructure itself. If you go to cloud, of course, you don't have to worry about the PBX breaking or the upgrade to the PBX or some of those other things. So there are reductions there. But instead, you add a lot more time that is related to vendor management, managing the vendor who is doing all of those tasks for you. And so there's some ups and downs on both sides of it, but when you look at the actual staffing, it's rarely a change in staff, it's a change in what the staff is doing. They can become more strategic, they can do a better job of addressing projects because they're a little less involved in that day-to-day, they do more vendor management, but all in all, when we talk about the number of total staff, it doesn't change a lot. Now, some people may lose a job, but it's because their role has been removed. It doesn't mean that headcount goes down because new roles are needed.
They either lose their job or hopefully they can retool or something, right?
For most of my clients, it's a retraining or a readjusting. A lot of the people that have these jobs today within the ID department are capable of doing some of that project-based work or forward-looking strategic thinking. They just don't have time for it. So sometimes the cloud has helped in that regard. Again, it doesn't lead to staffing reductions, but staffing adjustments, absolutely.
Okay. So looking more broadly then, here in Orlando at the Gaylord Palms this week, I have a general question for you, and that's what's the most significant trend in communications that your enterprise clients are dealing with today?
Mm-hmm. And I'm going to break this into a couple of categories because it a little bit depends on the kind of client I'm dealing with. So in some cases, a client that is somewhat sophisticated, maybe they attend shows like this or they follow the industry a little bit, they are starting to ask us a lot of questions about how the new platforms affect them, especially collaboration platforms. So they have an understanding that there's something that can be done, but they don't know the how or the what or who's the right one to deliver. Right now we have a lot more players than the industry could probably support, but that's because they're all coming at it from a slightly different direction. Mm-hmm. So we haven't had all that consolidation yet that might eventually reduce the number of players. So what we're seeing from a lot of what I call fairly sophisticated customers is they recognize, and in some cases they're paying attention to even more sophistication things like APIs and the platform as a service and looking at ways to leverage all the different capabilities that are being sold because they don't yet know how to buy them. And some of the salespeople don't know how to sell them at times too. So the perceptive vendors or the perceptive customers are looking at those areas and saying, I need help in making that procurement. Other customers, many of our, I'll just say a little less sophisticated customers, still good customers for me though, are still addressing that cloud stuff. To them it's still do I stay prem, do I go cloud, especially the mid-size organizations. Smaller organizations are a little more comfortable making that decision, recognizing what they give up, if you will, by going to the cloud is a lot of the headaches. But the mid-size organizations that already have staffing and have folks that are capable and used to supporting the system, those are the ones that are not yet convinced that it's the right move. So again, it depends on the type of client and what kind of questions we're getting. That's why I say kind of two categories. A lot of them are still addressing cloud or CPE as the single most important decision. Those that are looking a little further ahead, a little more sophisticated, they're saying, how do I leverage all these new capabilities, all the different platforms, and what's the long-term strategic play?
Okay. JR, thank you so much for being with us here today.
Thank you, Beth.
Where can folks go to find out more information should they want to?
Well, I always send people to 2 or 3 different sources. I've always sent folks for generic information through places like No Jitter, of course.
Of course.
I've sent clients to this show frequently. I have a couple clients here this time as well.
We like that.
I think that there's a lot of learning that can be done from what we would call independent sources. I'm an independent source myself, so obviously clients that come to me, my company only does independent consulting. So
they get the best of information.
that's what we would tell them. Not that the vendors can't be a good source, but the independent point of view is important. So I'm a member of the Society of Communications Technology Consultants, SCTC. All of our consultants in the SCTC are, by nature of being members, independent consultants. COMGroup, we're out of the Seattle area, but we do work all across the country, even a couple of international clients, and we're out of the Seattle area, but I think I'm on the road more than not. So happy to have anybody check us out too.
Okay, well, JR, thank you again for taking the time with us today. And folks, if you would like to catch this interview and all of the interviews we're doing here at Enterprise Connect in Orlando, check them out at No Jitter and enterpriseconnect.com.